She's fine, decided to eat again. Oh, you nasty little... Why are you so moody, huh? Why must you be so moody? What's wrong with you? Hey guys, welcome back to another video. It's been a while. Today we wanted to talk to you all about substrates. What substrates to use, or more correctly, what substrates we use and why. So let's take a quick look. Right, so the first thing we need to think about is, what is the substrate for? Yep, it's a snake bedding, or it's a bedding for a reptile in general. But different reptiles have different needs, obviously. Here, if we're talking about ball python breeding and the rub format, now we've used a few different substrates that I'll talk about quickly. We used to use paper, just unprinted newspaper, and I'm sure I have some. There we go. We still have some, so we use just simple unprinted newspaper. Now, I have learned to really dislike paper. We don't use it. We do for quarantine purposes. So when we have new animals come in, I mean, if an animal comes in with something like mites, the easiest way you're going to notice is on paper. You will notice also sometimes they're on paper. If you look through some of our videos or some of our lives, on occasion they may be on paper. That's when we're doing a full clean. And if I don't have the ReptiChip here, which I'll get onto in a second, if I don't have their substrate here, we clean them all out, sterilize the tubs, put paper in there. Usually it's for no longer than 48 hours. Most of the time it's 12 hours, 24 hours, something like that. But yeah, we then went from using paper, unprinted newspaper, to a mixture of orchid bark and coconut husk. Now, if you don't know what those two things are, orchid bark looks like little pieces of bark, and coconut husk is, coconut coir or core, whatever it's called. You usually get them as sort of like compressed blocks that you hydrate in water, they expand, and it's almost like this sort of earthy substrate. And that was more to aid with humidity, etc. And then we started trying actual premium coconut bedding. Now, and then we did a video a little while back. We have tried a few different ones. The two main ones we've tried are ReptiChip and Herp Husk. The Herp Husk, unfortunately, not for us. Now, not to say that it's a completely dreadful, horrific, horrible product, which it's not. But in our personal experience and in our personal collection, we don't use it. And the reason is, in a tub format, in a high humidity sort of style, in these sort of tubs, what ends up happening is, because it's not rinsed as many times, there's still a lot of tannins. Now, if you don't know what tannins are, that's what's in your tea. So if you put a tea bag in a cup of water, it releases those colorations. Those are tannins. Same with, if anyone has aquariums, if you put a new piece of wood in there, again, it will leach tannins and turn the water a tea color. Not harmful to snakes, I have to say that. Not harmful in any way, shape or form. However, when you have lovely light colored snakes, she's in shed, so it's a terrible example, but when you have lovely light colored snakes, like this lovely lady here, who is unfortunately in shed, the last thing you want is just snakes being stained. Now, a few of our snakes did get stained when we tried it. Wasn't the end of the world. It doesn't come off by washing, it comes off in the next shed cycle. But in a hobby where we're so focused on, the pattern mutations and the color mutations of these animals, the last thing we want to do is put them on a bedding that will sort of defeat the purpose. I know we've also found a little bit of mold growth. That's normal. These are natural products, so they're going to have some form of bacteria and fungi growing on them. So it's just one of those things where we don't personally use it in rubs. I will talk a little bit about Herp Husk and where we do still use it in a moment. But if we're talking about ball pythons in a rack system, we use ReptiChip. It's up there. I'll briefly talk about how we use it, but ReptiChip for us, out of everything we've tried, has been the best. So if we come close and take a look at this girl, for example, just a random girl, and I want to show her off because she's currently beginning to nest. She's filled with eggs. Excited about this clutch. But you can see, nice chunks. They hold humidity really well. Now, everyone has different ways of cleaning their tubs. We tend to do a bi-weekly spot clean. So twice a week, we'll go through them, pick out any bits that are soiled, have, you know, if they've pooped, if they've gone, you know, peed, etc. We take out those, we put fresh substrate in. You'll find as well, she's not done it too much. You can kind of see it here, where it's a bit overly humid, overly saturated. You can see the darker color, right? So if it's only, excuse me, if it's only like that, if it's only a light amount of this sort of oversaturated substrate, what we typically do is move it to the back and churn it over, right? And that distributes that overly wet substrate, and therefore it goes back to being normal, right? It starts to dry out at the back, etc. In cases where, I remember we're talking about a rack system, guys. So here's a perfect example. So this male right here, our pastel orange dream male, has made a mess, right? He's decided to sit in his water for some bizarre reason and overflowed it all over his substrate. Now, in cases like this, and we are due for a clean, what we do is we take all of this really wet stuff out and get rid of that. This back stuff, if it's clean, if you notice dust, do not worry, we're trying something new. That's the other thing I have to add, it is not dusty in the slightest. Now, I know you can see dust coming off of that, but that is we'll talk about that in another video when it comes to quarantine. But that is something we're trying. But what we do is we keep fresh ReptiChip made up in this big tub. Again, this is part of the process of us. It's not a great representation, unfortunately, because it is covered in dust, but the dust is there for a reason in this case. But basically what we do is we make up the blocks, put them in the big tub, let them dry out fully, so that when we're doing spot cleans, we're putting in mostly dried ReptiChip, because obviously what we don't want is to consistently add saturated bedding and essentially cause the boxes just become too humid. Because you can get, if it's too wet, if it's too damp, you can get things like scale rot and belly rot, etc. on any substrate. And then the other reason we use ReptiChip, don't have issues with mold. I don't think, Jay. I can go through every drawer and I don't think you'll find mold anywhere, even when they've gone to the bathroom. So it seems to be, you know, I think if you left it for a long period of time, potentially you end up getting something along the lines of mold. But that again is natural. It's also to do with airflow. If your boxes don't have much airflow, mold will grow. If it's got good airflow, it's being turned over consistently, you're not going to find that issue. Also, I've been working with Paul Milner from Urban Constrictors, who's currently the only supplier in the UK for ReptiChip. I mean, it's amazing. You order it, it's here like that. We usually get them in sort of 10 to 15 blocks, and that lasts us a good while. I think, Jay, how many blocks does it take to do the entire? Is it 2 blocks to do this? Two blocks does this entire rack. It goes a long way if you do it properly, if you make it up properly. It does go a long way. And we obviously, what we don't do is, I know some people will do, some people will probably call me a freak for not doing it. We do full detox cleans, but not weekly and not bi-weekly. We tend to use a substrate for as long as possible, obviously using judgment. If for example, this animal I showed you previously, he's going to have at least a 75% clean out here tomorrow, which is the next cleaning day, and we will clear out all of that and put some fresh stuff in. So the substrate's constantly getting replaced and refreshed, if you will, replenished. But we find that ReptiChip for us, for ball pythons in a rack system, is by far the best substrate to be using. It's the one we've chosen to use, the one we're sticking with. Not really looking to experiment with anything else. I like the product. The product does really well. Does what it says on the packaging. Really good quality. Really, like, practically zero dust. Clean. And I mean, you can see in some of these water bowls, for example, there is bits of ReptiChip, right? But you can see the color of the water is still clear. Now, if this was a different substrate, I mean, there's plenty of them out there, coconut substrates, the water would turn this very rich, dark tea color. Now, that's just the tannins that are present. It's quite unsightly, but ReptiChip, because it's been washed so many times, most of those tannins are gone. Now, if you get a load of ReptiChip in a bowl, is it never going to get stained? No, you will. You occasionally, I mean, here's another example. A bunch of substrate in there. and so the water's still clear. Again, all these will be cleaned, and I've got water all over myself. Sometimes if they've dropped a significant amount, I am trying to find one here, because look, here's another one, just because we're making the argument. Snake's dropped substrate in its water bowl, and it's still clear. But on the odd occasion, you may get slight tannin, nothing significant. It's a slight discoloration of the water. Again, won't harm the snake, unsightly to us, but otherwise all good. But that's what we do with the ball pythons in general, and the majority of the species, the carpet pythons, all of that. There is one ball python here that, if you take a peek in there, I mean, he's had a bit of a, I mean, this is the con of using, for us anyway, using Lignocell, which is what this substrate is. It looks like Aspen, it is not Aspen. I don't use Aspen, I do use Lignocell. But he is on Lignocell simply because he's actually allergic to coconut, which we found out the hard way when his head swelled up like a balloon. That's going to happen with every animal of any species. You'll get the odd one that reacts poorly to it. But I'll show you some of what we do next door and why we do that. I mean, this room's had a bit of a rejig, so don't mind if some parts are unfamiliar and it looks weird. But why is there a hatchling rack here? Things have changed. So if we take a quick look here, this is the 9-litre grow out tubs, right? And in these ones, we, again, all ReptiChip. And you can see this is probably a better representation of ReptiChip because we haven't put that diatomaceous earth in there. But again, nice chunks. The animals enjoy it. Again, you can look at all the tubs. There's no mold. And I'll see if I can find, there's substrate in that one. That was gone for a bit of a poop. She needs to be cleaned out. That one's shed. But again, the reason I'm showing you these, remember we are just before, she's finding something to eat again. Oh, you nasty little. Why are you so moody, huh? Why must you be so moody? What was wrong with you? But the point is that the reason I'm showing you this is just before feeding her. Here's an example, but to be fair, there's poo in that water. So that's not ReptiChip causing that. And the reason I'm showing you, this is like the dirtiest they get. Just before cleaning day, obviously, I mean, that one's had a bit of a bizarre poo that spread across there. But you can see none of these have mold. I mean, the Mexican Black King in this tub has decided to just make a cake out of it. Look how much substrate's in that bowl. And you can see there's some slight, let me come into the light. Is that better? Can you see that? There's some, hold on, where's the white bowl? There we go. Let's put screws in it. So, right, that's what I'm talking about. See the discoloration of water? Those are tannins, but you can see how much substrate's in there and how little tannins are actually come out. All that shows you is that this substrate has been rinsed multiple times. I have to wash that bowl as well. But you get, I mean, that was empty. You get my point. The point being that excellent substrate, we use it across a wide range of species. Even here, even with the tortoises, we're now using ReptiChip. With the anaconda, the carpet pythons, the rainbow boas, Peach, our Peach throat monitor. He's the only one who doesn't have ReptiChip, by the way, and that's because he is a different kind of species altogether. However, the point being that we use ReptiChip throughout, even in, and I mean they're 8 today, so you can, and these have made a bit of a mess with their water. He just had his meal today. Even in these, we're now trying out these V15 tubs, just as a, instead of using the 3-litre bra blasts for some of our holdbacks. Again, we keep all of these on ReptiChip, not have any problems with any of them. They do really well, brilliant sheds, no mold, again, same thing. only time we don't use ReptiChip on ball pythons are hatchlings. So when they're fresh out of the egg, and for the time that they're in, oh, this one's made a bit of a mess in the water bowl. Here we go. It's just a little GHI. I just realised it needs a different lid. This one's for me. So take a look at that. You'll see in our setup videos, we also, obviously we've shown how we set them up, but we use Lignocell. Now there is a reason for it, and the reason is that we have tried ReptiChip. It just becomes too humid too quickly in these small boxes. I think it's because the amount of ventilation is low, so you're not going to have as much ventilation going over it. Here with Lignocell, and I'll show you what happens with hatchlings, they just throw substrate everywhere. Now with Lignocell, being a dry substrate on its own, we just tip out the whole thing every week, retop it up with fresh Lignocell. The hatchlings basically just make a mess constantly. If this was ReptiChip, it would very quickly become too humid to use, and to be fair, also, here's another example, it would also become too expensive, and that's just the honest truth. Compared to the price of Lignocell, for this, obviously if we were using Lignocell throughout, I think the price difference wouldn't be that much. But in terms of using it for these little boxes, it only takes about a handful of Lignocell to fill these boxes up. And that means we can weekly, sometimes more than once a week, come in here, take the hatchlings out, tip out all the substrate, give it a wipe and disinfection. The bowls all get sterilized in like hot water in the bath, and then they're all freshly set up again. And that takes us very little time, and it's effective. Issue with Lignocell, it doesn't like water. It will go moldy. If it gets too wet, it will start to develop mold. Not that we've experienced it that much. I think when we use V next door, the ball python Lignocell, we notice it more with him than these little tubs, because these little tubs get changed out so frequently. It doesn't usually show. It does help as well that when they pee on Lignocell, you can identify the spot because it changes color. So let me see if I can find a good example. So when they pee on the Lignocell, there's no one peed in these boxes. I mean, that one's made a horrific mess in the front. All right, semi-good idea. Semi-good example anyway. You can see there in the corner, right, where the animal pees, the substrate tends to go this bright fluorescent yellow. So it also, let's say this ball python in particular here, if I remove his water bowl, he's predominantly clean. There's a few little bits there. In those cases, we just obviously take the water bowl, sterilize it. He's going to try and pop shot me. And this here, this is one of the major things with Lignocell. It gets everywhere, absolutely everywhere. It gets in your socks, and God help you getting it out of your socks. It gets in the carpet. It gets everywhere, and you're just constantly fighting to keep it down. But that's the substrates we use. So the two main substrates overall is, well, ReptiChip by far. We use that with pretty much every species we have, bar a few specials. Lignocell for hatchlings, and I did mention before about Herp Husk. The only animal we still have on Herp Husk is Burma. Now Burma is on Herp Husk. You're gonna have to excuse her. She's in a bad mood. We believe she's gravid. That thing there, it's not an ovulation even though it looks like one. That's a chicken. Satiate her hunger. But what we find is with Burma, because she's got such a large trough that she can climb into, she prevents it overflowing. Now what that means is that she's still got plenty of humidity in here because she's got such a large water bowl, but she's not soaking the substrate. And as a result, we haven't noticed the leaking of tannins. We haven't noticed her, tanned in any way. I think that in a large vivarium where less humidity is required, maybe in some cases, or where the animal can't really spill water too much, or where the substrate is never getting saturated in water, it can work well. You don't get that leaching of tannin. So there are a few species. For example, I'm sure if I used it in Peach's Viv, again, it would be fine. She's got a large water bowl. She doesn't splash the water out. Previously, Burma had a smaller water bowl and she was forever sitting in it and tipping it upside down. That would then lead to issues. You'd get mold growing in there because of that, extra humidity and the extra dampness of the substrate. She would inevitably become tanned from the leaching of those tannins again. But she's doing well. She's the only animal we have on Herp Husk. I mean, we have a lot of it up in the loft. We kind of have to use it. And I'm not going to get rid of it. I know some people, have disliked Herp Husk more than others. As far as I see it, it doesn't work for us for what we want it to do in our racks. So we've chosen to stick with ReptiChip exclusively. But whilst we still have it, we are using it on Burma. She does go through quite a lot of substrate. And she's doing really well on it. Why am I going to get rid of something that works perfectly well with one of our animals? So I hope, because we've had a lot of questions about this since we put up one of our last update video, well, our last videos when we talked about substrates in general. But if you have any questions regarding that, please don't drop it. Please do. Please do leave it in the comment section down below or message us and we'll try and respond as quickly as we can. Let us know what you thought about this video, because I'm trying to be as honest as I can and trying to show you what we do. Not necessarily what is the right way or the only way. There are many ways out there, and as we've alluded to, we have tried many different methods. What we're using now for us, this is what works for us. We love ReptiChip. We're sticking to ReptiChip. We get along really well with Paul. And beyond that, it is a premium product. It is a product we want to house our royals on. This is the kind of bedding we want to give them. But that's, again, our decision. That's what we are doing. Anyone who watches this video, please make up your own minds. What we're saying is not gospel. You might try it and go, not for me. But do try it if you haven't. I know most people, or a large number of people, are on ReptiChip. Please don't be on paper. Please. Love your snakes more than paper. Apart from the obvious quarantine measures, whatever. They deserve a little bit more. Just a tiny bit. But anyway, let's stop rambling. Hope you enjoyed that video, guys. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button. Leave a comment down below. Like I said, let us know what you thought. Any questions, leave them down below. And until the next video, if I haven't forgotten anything, no, ReptiChip everywhere, no. Right, until the next video, we'll see you then. Bye.